Good morning. We're officially on recording now. My name is Rick Jiha. Welcome to the A to Z team building call. So on our first call, we just kind of talked generally about the concepts of team building. I want to just review quickly that I've had people over the years. I think the first time I taught a team building class was like 2004. So about 18 years ago. I had taught the idea of team building as a result of some of my Mike Ferry coaching back in the 90s at the Century 21 office I used to manage. And so the concept is not new by any means. I did my first version of a team probably in 1996, 95, 96, my 15th, 16th year in the business. But understanding a team at a deeper sense allows you to know that a team is not a fad. It's a fact of life if you want to build leverage into your business, meaning I want to make more money, deal with more clients, have a more leveraged, sustainable business without having to risk the relationships I have, my significant other, my children, and the important relationships in my family and my life. So one of the things that we sort of touch on last time is the importance of understanding that most of what we tell you is a guideline, not a rule. If there's going to be something that I think is a rule, I'll probably yell it out a little bit more loudly. And the main thing that I wanted to talk about today is a couple of things. First, that most of the time, remember it's a guideline, not a rule, that most of the time, the first thing we advise people to do in building a more sustainable business, yet we advise this of brand new agents who don't even have leads, is to have a contract transaction coordinator or somebody that can help you with the myriad of paperwork. And I have people all the time, in an attempt to hide their desire to not spend the money, say, well, I need to do it the first time so that I'll know all the paperwork. Well, if you're working with a good transaction coordinator, believe me, you're going to know the paperwork because you're going to be involved in signing it, seeing it. You're going to see the emails where it's sent to your clients. And obviously, if you're learning along the way, you should be watching. And when I see a particular form go to one of my clients nowadays, after 42 and a half years of selling real estate, I don't think to myself, gosh, I wonder what that form means. But if I were brand new, I'd be like, oh, we just sent that form to the client. What is that form? Why did we send it? Those are the things that are important. But a contract transaction coordinator, over the years that I've been in the business, now I've been using personally contract transaction coordinators since 1994. So almost, 28 years essentially. That's the first time I had a contract transaction coordinator. I had a version of for that. Now, that idea is not new, and yet the concept of it is growing. There's more and more contract transaction coordinator businesses out there. And they're doing different kinds of things. I even recently was able to hire a contract listing coordinator that per listing is going to charge me a certain amount to make sure all of the paperwork. Not ideal, but certainly something I need for a short time. So it's very important to know that teams are not a fad, and they come out of necessity from being super busy. And how do you get busy? Well, if you don't have a lead generation rhythm going, or a lead generation repertoire, or a lead generation regime, I'm going to use all those R terms. Let me just mute all of the laughing people. Can you help me with that, Selena? Thank you. Jeff Gonzalez is obviously somewhere where there's a party going on. So, yes, this, Selena, how does the recording get available to?
Yeah, two ways. We have it on our YouTube channel, and then we also post it to our Facebook page as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll be taking a bunch of notes, and I just want to make sure I catch everything.
Yeah, you bet.
So we have people on the call who probably have already had some semblance of a team. And remember, there's no right or wrong. Okay, not right, wrong, good or bad on how you run a team. It's what works, meaning what's effective and what's profitable. And profitable at the level that makes it worth your while to be in business, okay? So that's very important. And the reason I say that is I've coached and have been coached and been caught doing things that in the big scheme of things was not a profitable venture. meaning I was giving so much of the money back to the agent doing the work that once I paid the transaction coordinator and the salaries of the people that were supporting that person, I ended up being in the negative. So it's very important that you understand that. Now, we're probably not going to touch too much on compensation today, but I do want to talk more about the hiring and firing process. Selena, by the way, humble and amazing, is really incredible at that hiring and firing process. That's why I like we're both on here to banter back and forth. But a couple of things that have become vital in my business is that if I'm going to hire somebody to either be an administrator, a client care coordinator, an assistant, whatever you want to call them, that person, that I have a resume and a DISC assessment. Those are the two main things I want to have before I do the interview, meaning reading the resume and reading the DISC assessment to me are going to be the two things that will indicate whether I want to take this to the next level. Now, I want to stop right there for a minute. I talked to you about a transaction coordinator by contract. I do not typically do both a resume and a DISC on them. If I'm going to hire one, I do want to get a bit of a resume to see what did they do before they did transaction coordination and how long have they been doing transaction coordination, all of that. But I also want to get reviews from agents currently using them. All right. And then this is a tough question. If you're going to hire a contract transaction coordinator, say this to them. It's not easy to say, but I'd like you to. Can you tell me about an agent that you were helping and today you are not working together? And is it all right if I contact any one agent that you used to work with that you're not working with anymore? It's the only way you're going to get the truth. I remember when I took my first management job, no one in my family wanted me to take it. I was working at the family real estate company, my uncle's brokerage. And my dad pulled me aside one day. He was the only one who said, do you want to live your life, Rick, saying, I wish I had? Or do you want to live your life saying, I'm glad I did? He said, what's the worst that would happen if you take this management job and leave the family brokerage? And I said, that I suck at it and I come back to my uncle's brokerage. And he goes, how bad is that? I go, embarrassing, but not really that bad. He goes, take the management job. And then when I was going through the process of interviewing for it, he said to me, hey, why don't you call the manager that's no longer managing and find out why? So I called, I knew the guy because we were in the town of Fremont, California. I'm born and raised there, knew all the real estate agents there, and talked to him. And he said, he told me everything. And I could see where his weaknesses were going to be my strengths, but where he had strengths, I had weaknesses. Okay. And his strengths, where I had weaknesses, were organization and structure, but he was so organized and so structured, he forgot to pay attention to the agents. So the office was shrinking, not growing. Okay. I had never recruited an agent in my life. I told some people how fun it was to work at my uncle's brokerage, and yeah, they came over, but I wasn't really recruiting them. So I go to Century 21, take over an office of 12 agents, and in 9 years later, it's 130 agents, me not even thinking that, oh, I might be pretty good at recruiting. I didn't even think of that. I was just doing my job. But here's what I want you to remember. The main reason I told this story is there's no questions you can't ask. And if the question that you want to ask is not allowed, then you might consider that this might not be the right person for me. Make sense to everybody? Like, why would that be a big secret? Why you and this agent got a divorce when I was the transaction coordinator? So know that. But everything I'm going to be talking to you about is about the hiring and firing process as it relates to permanent people. Now, you might say, well, when I hire a buyer's agent, I don't pay them anything unless they close a transaction. Exactly. Yet you are taking on the responsibility, and they are now sucking off or basically taking from the value proposition you have set up. Your assistant, your transaction coordinator, your time, all three of those, right? So we have to look at cost allotment and all those kinds of things. So you are devoting some money, a lot of money, in training and all of that stuff, even if they're an experienced agent. The agent that's the longest on my team, Marissa, came to my team with already having 15 years of experience as an agent, 15 years. And yet the amount of time I have consumed training Marissa and taking her through the processes has been way more than I would have ever expected for a 15-year experienced agent. So remember that if you're going to bring somebody onto your team, the best way to cut the odds of having them come on and leave is to go through a very slow and arduous and process-oriented hiring process, okay? Meaning step by step. Now, Selena and I coach for Workman Success Systems. A lot of what we do is available. They offer it up to allow people to learn from it for no cost at all. But if you, I think, Amberly, are you and Jeff still coaching with Workman?
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
Good. So you have a lot of the stuff at your fingertips. And,
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Thank you. And so, but we will offer you up some of the things that we can offer up as much as we can. The bottom line is, when we put ads out, we give them directions in the ads that we are looking for people that are hungry, humble, smart, and coachable first. Those are 4 very important things: hungry, humble, smart, and coachable. And we also put out in the ads everything else we need. Selena and my wife, Casey, are much better at writing ads than I am. I'm more about the high I. They're both about the high D. Let's get to a direct point. I see Kim nodding her head. Thank you, Kim, for taking the side of all the women, not me. It's okay. But that high D does accomplish something, meaning it gets to the point more directly. And that's why I know if this isn't the job I'm supposed to do, let's get somebody else to do it. And that job of advertising such that you attract the right talent is good. We use things like Wise Hire. We put Facebook, just put a Facebook post on your own Facebook page and the Facebook pages of people you know. Some of the people I have coached over the years, and I've coached thousands over the many years, have found some of their best employees from their client database, believe it or not. People that you sold a house to in the past or something like that have yielded some incredible help because they already liked you because of how you worked when you sold them your home. So that part is taken care of. Does that make sense to everybody? I'll stop right there. Okay. Selena, you know the interrupter rule. Just come off mute and I'll know you want to talk. You want to talk. Go ahead.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had success in the past with posting on our Facebook page and even offering an incentive, offering a gift card. And we usually do $500 of, hey, if there's somebody in your life who you know would make a great client care coordinator, especially lately as things have changed in the job market.
Yeah.
And it just makes them think a little bit more about it. It's not for them recommending it. It's if we do actually make the hire.
Hire them. Yeah.
Yeah, if we hire them, and it just makes people think about it a little bit stronger than just seeing it kind of fly through there on their Facebook feed. But most of our hires have been a personal recommendation from a past client or a someone in our business networking groups and things like that, because they do think a little bit more strongly about it than anybody else. So don't discount your networking group first.
Yes.
But we do use Wise Hire. I like Wise Hire because it disc assess everyone to begin with. So I don't have to disc them after the fact.
And Selena, can you comment a little bit on the cost of Wise Hire? I think, is it in a monthly?
Yep, it's monthly. It's $199 a month, but you can turn it off at any one time. Like I've run an ad previously and I think I had like 300 applicants right away, which is more than I could go through at one time. So I paused it immediately until I could make my way through it. So you can turn it on and off at any one point. There's no contract. They have great templates in there. If they feel like it matches well to whatever job description you put in, it'll come up and say whether or not they're an excellent fit, a good fit, a bad fit. I do not put all of my faith in whether or not it is a good disc assessment fit. We'll talk about that as we progress through all of these things, because I know some of the best listing agents on the planet, and they are a high SC, which would not normally be a great disc assessment for a listing agent.
Yeah.
One of the best I know in this country is the highest SC I've ever met.
Right.
So I don't put all of my faith in that. But if you are a visual person, their format is also really, really great to kind of keep things in line for applicants. So it's really built for agents to be able to use well.
Good. And I want to transition right into that. Why do we ask for both a disc and a resume? Oh my gosh. Selena just touched on so many things. She just said that one of the top listing agents she's ever met does not have a behavioral style that matches what we would all think would be an ideal listing agent. And that is both the best thing about this and the worst thing at the exact same time. That because of a person's natural behavior does not mean they act best in that behavioral style, nor does it mean that their ability to perform in a certain particular role will be limited based on their past and their history and their ability to conform. Let me give you an idea. While I was at Keller Williams, I started seeing this one job emerge called regional director. So it was a region. So for instance, Northern California and Hawaii was a region of KW. And then in Southern California, because of the density of the population, there was like from the San Diego, Mexico border all the way up to Fresno, there was like 6 or 7 other regions. And then from Fresno to the Northern California border was only one region. Why? Because of the density of population and the size of the boards. So I applied to be a regional director. It was a paid with bonuses, you earned ownership, all kinds of stuff. My disc kept me from even getting an interview, even though at that point I already owned 5 Keller Williams franchises and had proven success, as I'd been a very successful agent long before I ever came to KW, and had been a successful recruiter running a Century 21 office. I didn't even get an interview. And when I tried to find, and people were avoiding my phone calls, it was weird. I'm like, this is KW, everybody talks to each other. Finally, someone said, oh, well, your AVA, which is sort of a disc on steroids, didn't match the job. And that just, from then on, I said, I'm on a mission to let people know that the reason you look at a resume, even if the person's never had a job, maybe they're right out of school, the resume is to tell you, has there been a history of success? Were they a great athlete? Were they a great, did they get straight A's in high school? Or did they, if they were in the military, did they have an honorable discharge? And all of these things, it doesn't have to be, oh, they had a job and they got promoted to manager. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for any history of success in anything they've done. Sports, education, military, anything along the way, including past jobs. Now, I helped a coaching client recently because the ideal behavioral style for an admin, a client care coordinator, is a high S, a mid-level C, and a mid to low, a high S, high, 75 to 95, and then maybe 2/3, 60, 50 to 60% C, and then an I that's at the 50% or a little low because you don't want them being so talkative, and really no D is necessary. So I get this great admin candidate for one of my clients. My client brings one of my coaching clients, and I'm usually the one helping them do the interview. We look at the resume. There's all kinds of signs of success, client satisfaction agent at a insurance company, and this and that.
No.
So all of these different things were showing that this person had had success. But the disc came out with a super high I, followed by a high S, followed by a mid-level C. What was my fear? I had an assistant that was a super high I in the 90s, 91, before I even knew what that meant. I didn't have anything to do with disc. All I know, she talked too damn much. I would leave the office and my cousin, who was an agent at the office, would call me and say, all she does is talk when you leave, right? Like that. And I'm like, I know, but I need her, and she's doing enough that makes my life easier. And my return on investment has been 2 to 1, meaning since I've gotten her, I'm making twice more what her cost is than what she cost me, right? So I needed an ROI, I had proof of that. Here's the thing. When I have a disc that's a super high I have to create questions in my interview, listen to this, that will help me reveal if the high I has been a detriment to her success in client care roles. Does everybody understand what I just said? Okay, I have to create questions. What the question might be, well, I'll tell you. I asked this lady, I said, hey, would you mind telling me about a time at your last job? Because she was at a car. I remember this specifically at a auto parts wholesale facility where her clients were auto parts shops like O'Reilly and those kind, Grand Auto, all of those things that would buy parts and sell them to the public. They were the wholesaler. And I said, hey, would you mind telling me about a time in the 13 years you were there when the boss called you in to rave about your performance and give you kudos and maybe a bonus, maybe not? And then I went quiet, no emotion on my face when I asked the question, because a lot of times the high I, like me, I'm a super high I, I'll go, tell me about a time when you are, by your emotions, you're indicating that you want an answer that will please you when you want the answer, the truth, regardless of how you personally feel about it. So your emotions have to be, that's why I will not do an interview where I cannot see your face, right? I've clicked a couple of you saying, please turn on your video, because when we're teaching, when we're interviewing, we like to see the face. Is the information being absorbed? That kind of. So I'll have my notepad, right? And I'll say, so tell me about a time when your boss brought you in just to give you kudos and tell you how amazing you were doing. And then I position myself with my pen so that person that I'm interviewing knows I'm taking this answer seriously, and I'm going to write it down, and I want to watch their body language as they answer the question. Are they fidgeting? Are they confident? Are they leaning into the question? Those are all indicators of their, are they similar to the DISC assessment they gave us, or what's going on? So you have to be in the process there of really paying attention to what's going on with the person you're interviewing. And she was really exuberant about it. Oh, he brought me in. He said that a customer had called them and that they had come in there pissed off, and that if they hadn't talked to her, that they would have left pissed off, and that he was so proud of her and everything. And he did give her a $50 restaurant certificate. And she was so good. I go, can you tell me about what stage in your 13 years that happened? She goes, it happened about year 4. It happened again in my 6th year. And she was really specific about that. It happened 2 or 3 times over her 13 years. Now, did I really want to know this? No, I could see in her resume there was a history, but I can't ask her the next question without asking that one. And my next question was, okay, good. Conversely, can you tell me about a time that the boss brought you in the office to tell you that he wasn't happy with something that you did? Can you tell me about that? And sure enough, this lady said, yeah, like that. I said, yes, you can tell me about a time? And she goes, yes. I said, great. Could you be as elaborate and as detail oriented as you were about the previous story? She goes, okay. She didn't seem very happy about telling me the story. But basically in her 4th year, he brought her in to tell her she talked too damn much. That's what I was looking for. Now, this is a specific example. It doesn't always go that smoothly, but that's what I was looking for. I didn't want to not hire her because she had a super high I, but guess what? It happened twice in 13 years. I can deal with that. As a coach representing my client, I can say, hey, a couple times in 13 years that she talked too damn much and it affected her performance. I could deal with that, because if she were good in everything else we interviewed her in, right? Here's one thing I want you to remember. DISC does not measure for intelligence or integrity. 2 I's, intelligence and integrity. It doesn't measure for that. It measures for behavior. And what behavior? The behavior when we're typically under stress or pressure, which most people are when they're at work. Can you keep that in mind? Go ahead, Selena.
I'd also like to say that a lot of times when people have a high I or other things, like those of us women with high Ds often get told that we're bossy.
That are irritating to you? Is that what you're saying? They're irritating to you?
Women that are high Ds get told we're bossy from a very early age. As young children in school, we find ways to compensate for that. So sometimes I'll see that high I on a DISC, and especially if I'm looking for client care, and I do something similar to Rick. I've interviewed thousands and thousands, and most of the time it's on Zoom, and I have different testing mechanisms as well, right? So I'm a very low I. and I have to turn it on. It's like acting. I tell Rick all the time, I'm like, my eyes like -12. So it's really, really difficult for me. He laughs because nobody ever believes it when I tell them, because I speak in public, I do things all the time, but it doesn't come naturally. But when I see it that high and it's a client care, obviously it's a red flag for me. And when I'm doing a Zoom interview, I'm testing. And so I will start talking with my hands, and I will raise the pitch of my voice, and I will get excited to see if I'm getting the same thing back, right? So I'm checking the energy level. But just like Rick did with what he did, I'm checking to see if they are reciprocating and being egged on by that, or if they've learned a coping mechanism over the years that keeps them from getting too pulled into it, right? Too much into the water cooler conversation, or if they've learned a coping mechanism over the years to operate in a professional environment without getting pulled into being too outspoken. You know, we have all of those kids in school, right, who you got the progress report nonstop of your kid talks too much in class, your kid talks too much in class, your kid talks too much in class. Those were probably all high eyes. But over time, they learn. Rick Jiha, Rick Jiha, Rick Jiha.
And my younger son, Joey Jihad, Joey Jihad, Joey
Yeah.
Jihad.
So people do learn. And just like Rick, and when I said, I know one of the best listing agents in the country, who's the highest SC, 99 S and C, lower I than I have, and no D. And one of the absolute best listing agents you've ever met was a theater major in college. So he learned how to turn all of that on and do all of that, right? So he's learned how to behave in that way when he needs to. So all of those things, when you see that, people, I have coaching clients all across the country, and they'll say, oh, I saw the disc, I'm not even going to talk to them. And I said, please, 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 you cannot do that. People are fully capable of still operating. It's just telling you kind of what their natural state is a lot of the time. But there's a lot of ways to determine. Now, I will tell you that if I get on and I'm interviewing a young lady for a client care, and she's flipping her hair nonstop, and she's like doing this, and she's all over the place, and she can't have a conversation without like being super excited in an interview, yeah, I'm going to pass. Usually I'm writing the word no really big on a piece of paper and I move on.
Yeah.
Because you need them to focus.
Right. And she makes a really good point there. The lady that I was interviewing in this specific situation I'm talking about was completely attentive to the interview. Like, she didn't act like a high I during the interview. In other words, she took it seriously and smiled during her answers. You could see that it was bursting to come out, because when she told the story of getting the kudos, she was bubbling over, and then kind of settled down when she was telling the story about being reprimanded for talking too damn much, right? So the main thing is that you want to use, so let's say that the hiring process is 100%, everything you do, the disc, the resume, the interviews, everything you do, and you should have 2 or 3 interviews minimum, because what do we say? We hire very, very slowly, we fire quickly, all right? But if the whole thing weighed 100%, then the disc should never consume more than 25% ever. And if it does, you need to look back and ask yourself, why? Why is that disc? Like Selena just said, if that's not going to present well, if you have a client coming into the house, into the office, and she's flicking her hair back, you know, it's not going to present well. You have to think of the position. Selena and I are interviewing, well, Selena's doing all the work, I'm pretending to, but a VA, for instance, but this VA will have no communication with our clients. And Selena said the VA has a very thick accent. No problem. As long as they can do their job, right? Doesn't matter, because they're not going to be talking to anybody but us. So these are things to consider when you're doing the hiring, firing. Now, I just told you the quintessential ideal behavioral style for an admin. The quintessential ideal style for a buyer's agent is a high I, okay, about 3/4 or more, so 75% or more, and then enough S, so at least 60% S is what I like to see, or higher, okay? Because what? S is a team player. If you're getting somebody on the team, so if I can get a nice high IS on my team, it would be great. I just like just enough C so that they'll know and learn and be compliant around filling out contracts and all those little tiny check boxes. And if their C gets too much below 50%, a lot of times they're not going to pay a lot of attention to that. So your ideal buyer's agent is an ISC. All right. Selena, any comments on that? Because I'm going to move quickly, but I want you to interrupt.
Go ahead.
So the reason I say that is, have I hired buyer's agents that have a lot of D? Yes, I have. But in that case, I wanted that person because that person was going to do this for me or that for me, or I knew that they could take care of that. A lot of people have a latent D, meaning it doesn't show up on their disc, but if you put them in a very stressful situation, man, right? So I have Marissa, the longest standing member on my sales team. Let's see, is there anybody from my team on here? No. Sherry knows Marissa, but that's it. But Marissa, 38 years as a nurse at Stanford University. And for the last 22, she's been what's called a charge nurse, meaning she's in charge. She's 4'9". Her hair is longer than she is. Okay. And she has this saying, because I've seen her be a D, even though she has no D in her disc. And she says, oh, she made Lakeisha come out. That's what she says about a patient. And she uses it all the time. She'll say, I was at an open house and this agent came in and he made Lakeisha come out. Well, Lakeisha is her D. She just calls her D Lakeisha because she gets in your face direct in those moments. And that comes from being a charge nurse, just like Selena said earlier. The theater major learned how to turn them on. Well, guess what? As a charge nurse where people's lives are at stake, she knew how to turn it on. Grab the damn crash cart and clear the room. Go ahead, Selena.
Just realized, is everyone here familiar with the disc? Anyone not familiar with the disc? Jason, sort of?
Jason, a little bit? Yeah,
Are
okay.
you familiar with what the D, the I, the S, and the C stand for?
Yeah, I just Googled it. I've just never taken the test.
Okay.
But I understand the concept and I've taken a lot of personality assessments.
Jason, I'm gonna send you the link later. I'm just making my.
You're gonna sign up and you're gonna find out how much of a D I am.
Jason's a high I and a high D.
Oh.
He's a take charge kind of guy.
I am a
I'll put
driven.
money on it.
I love
Okay.
the joke about being a -12I because I'm a 2I on my actual disc. And I joke that that means I'm just aware that emotions exist and that I should talk to people, not that I actually can or am willing to.
I have a feeling.
Just one.
Kim?
I just have a question about the disc because I was introduced to it a long time ago when I worked in corporate. I worked for Blue Shield of Idaho in their IT department. And as an exercise, they had everyone tape a piece of paper to their back that had a circle, and then everyone in the room that you worked with would go put a dot where they thought you were. And I found that really interesting, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And everyone was confused by my results because I was equally
Around.
in all quadrants. What is, I mean, I joke and say that makes me a chameleon because I can perform or interact in all those areas depending on the situation. But I'm just curious what your observation has been because you've obviously dealt with this a lot more than me.
Well, first of all, I think that's a great exercise. It's one of my favorite things to do whenever I get a new team that I'm coaching. I just did it last Friday, actually. I had everybody's disc reports. I'd not given it to anyone on the team. And then I taught what disc was. We went through every aspect of it. And then I asked everyone to guess after learning what it was, what each person on the team was. And for the most part, most folks were pretty close. So it typically means that you're really, really good at reading people and making adjustments to what people need. right? So one of my favorite things, and as you're building teams, guys, this is going to be a great recommendation for you. And it was a lesson that I learned kind of the hard way. As you are bringing people on, my suggestion is to disc them. And then when you hire someone, to print that disc, create a binder for your team that you keep in the office. And everybody's disc assessment goes in the binder, and it is open to everyone. And there's a reason for this, because typically if you start seeing a problem between two agents or two staff members or even the team leader and another staff member, you can pull that binder out, and there are certain pages in there that talk about the ways that you like to be communicated with and the ways you don't like to be communicated with. It's like page 11, I think, depending on which report you have. And you can usually break it down to the fact that you're not communicating in the ways that you like to be communicated with. Now, Kim, it sounds like you have found the ways to communicate with most people. And it's really, really important to kind of get to that point, right? So as leaders, it is our job to get to them, not for them to come to us, but us to go to them. So, and I like to tell this story a lot with DISC because it is really what opened my eyes up to it. So when I first started working with the team, Rick, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of taking over here, but it's a really good story.
No, you're totally good. It's not like you don't know what you're talking.
In New York, I started working with that team about 6-7 years ago. And I was just an independent contractor at the time, building some nerdy software, because that's my other side, super nerdy. And I was working with the transaction coordinator, and I needed a lot of input from her to continue building the software. And I would send her little messages about what I needed. And I noticed about a month in, she really wasn't responding really well to me anymore. She was very nice, Italian lady, just very talkative. And all of a sudden I felt tension when I would come in. And finally, after about a month, I said to her, did I do something wrong? I'm just curious, like I feel like something's happened. And she came up and she said, you don't say thank you. And I said, what?
Wow.
Thank you. And she said, no, when you send me an email and you ask me for something and I send you the email back with it, you do not email me back and say thank you. Well, I'm a high D. I think transaction is complete. I asked, you gave, I move on. I'm like, why would I? That's just me. Like, I don't want to waste 5 extra seconds writing thank you. I'm moving on to the next thing. To her, it's really important that she gets that validation, right? That I'm appreciative of the time she spent to give me the answer. When I pulled her disc, it definitely said that. And I was like, uh-huh. And I'm thinking, good, do I have the time to write thank you every time I send an email? You know? But I did it. God bless Google email when they made predictive text at the bottom that now I don't even have to type it. I just click thank you. But see how important that was? It was 2 seconds of my day to do it, but it was wildly important to her. Yeah, it is. Sherry Boss, like, great question. Realistically, your brain is not fully developed until you're 21, 22 years old. So you're probably not going to get an accurate test on a teenager. Just a heads up. So as you're growing, I quit the person I worked with in New York 3 times due to miscommunication. On the 3rd time, someone else that was a great friend of ours said, I want both of you to meet me at lunch. We're going to the diner and you both have to bring your disc and so we're going to sit at the table. And when we sat at the table across from each other, he made us read that page and we were not talking to each other in the ways that we could be heard. Okay, so when it comes down to it, usually that's what's happening. So Kim, kudos to you, because if your coworkers felt that way, it means that you were speaking to them and listening to them in a way in which they felt they could be heard.
Right.
Thank you.
And I want to add one other thing, guys, that is not, of course, required. It's a suggestion, and that is the 5 love languages assessment. I like doing them on my team, especially I'm talking about my real estate team. And there's reason people say, well, that's more for relationships and couples. Yes, it is. Think about what the 5 love languages are. Do most of you know them? Anybody? Raise your hand if you know what they are by heart. You don't have to repeat them. I just want to know if you know. Okay. They are words of acknowledgement, gifts, acts of service, physical touch, and quality time. Think about that. If you knew what those were, and I always tell people, if you're going to build a team, read a book called The Platinum Rule. Platinum Rule is written by Dr. Tony Alessandra. It's a great book. It does involve the DISC or behavioral assessments. But basically the Platinum Rule, what's the golden rule? A lot of you have a religious background. You know the golden rule is treat others as you'd like to be treated. Do unto others as you'd have done unto yourself. The Platinum Rule says that's broken. Let's go to the Platinum Rule. Do unto others as others would like done unto them. And how would you know? You'd ask or you'd figure it out. Well, that's why I like to do the 5 love languages, because if it's quality time, what does that mean? When I'm going to be giving them a review or giving them a reward, that would mean quality time with them one-on-one, meaning I'm not distracted. All of those things would be in play. Gifts, easy, right? You give them a little gift, a gift certificate, a bonus, whatever. Words of acknowledgement. Hey, you did such an amazing job. Just like what that one said that was just disappointed with Selena because she wouldn't even just say thank you, right? And then physical touch. People say, well, physical touch has no place in the workplace. No, if you know a person's physical touch, when you're walking by their desk, just putting your hand on their shoulder alone is physical touch, okay? And you know their physical touch because you did their 5 love languages. That's going to be the person that when they feel that, they're going to sit up, they're going to grin, they're going to go, thank you, that kind of thing. So as you get to know those 5, it's very important that when you're honoring your team, or also knowing what's keeping them from being maybe the best employee they can be. All right. Now, remember, buyer's agents are not employees. They're ICAs, they're independent contractor agreements. I mean, there are people out there who pay salaries and stuff. That's different. I'm not getting into that. But Selena has put her Wise Hire link for the DISC, so that if you want to take it, you can. And just keep in mind that, right, guys, when you're looking at the DISC assessment, you're basically looking at the questions and thinking. You want to think quickly. You don't want to overthink the question. Am I more like this or more like this or less like this or less like this? And just answer quickly and keep work in mind when you're doing it. Okay.
Rick,
Yes, Erica, go ahead.
can I ask a quick question? And it kind of
Please.
piggybacks on what Kim Renshaw just shared. So years ago, like I've always used DISC assessments myself as I was bringing people into my own team or the mentoring program that I was running. And my DISC sits at about 60% in each of those 4 categories. And so when she said chameleon just now, it kind of explains myself, because I feel like I can shift between things fairly quickly. And I remember being told by, I can't think of the speaker's name right now to save my life, but that combination basically makes for really good management type styles, because you can, move through them fairly quickly. But I also find myself in an extreme amount some days of like ADD, because I can't focus. I don't feel like I'm focused in one certain place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's
totally
something that either of you have seen or watched somebody else put in place that's helped them with that, or just more of a statement for me, I guess, at the moment.
Selena, any comments?
You're saying that a specific DISC assessment leads to
My
that?
own DISC assessment is
DISC.
about 60% across the board in all 4
Yeah, she's right here.
categories.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very unusual. Normally,
Yes.
if that comes in, normally I would tell you to take it again.
Okay.
Usually if there are, okay, so 2 over the line is standard. I mean, obviously it happens. I have 3 over the line. But 4 over the line, I typically usually I say somebody either tried to game the system, they answered it in the way they thought that I would want it to be answered, or sometimes when it's 4 over the line, it was an incredibly stressful time. Once I had a young man that took it and he had a car accident on his way home, but he thought I wanted the DISC assessment right then. So he was like, I gotta get it done. And he did it anyway. And he was super stressed. And when he retook it a couple of days later, he did just fine. And he only had 2 over the line. So feel free to take the link that I posted there if you want, Erica, and I'll send it to you whenever you're done. And by the way, guys, DISCs do change.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're also, it can change based on who you work with. My C went way up when I worked with that really high SC out of working with him and expectations on because I knew how high his C was and he needed so much more data in order to make a decision that I went up as a result. So things can happen in your life or who you're working with that can make adjustments as well.
Okay.
But if you would like to take it again, I'm happy to send it to you and just see where you kind of land. And yes, Sherry, you privately messaged me, but it says, can your mood influence it? Definitely, I encourage you to wait until you are in a quiet space, no distractions, you know, nothing to kind of make sure that you didn't just have a super stressful situation, and answer it with whatever it is that is your first gut response. Don't overthink it, you know. And by the way, I tell every applicant this as well. Typically, like if I bring someone in, they haven't disked yet, I say, please give yourself some quality, you know, quiet time where you're not going to have anybody bothering you. We want to make sure that you're, you know, in a great space to take the assessment. You know, that way they just feel like, huh, I've got the time to dedicate to it. By the way, this one includes motivators, which Rick, we don't have time to get into, but it'll give you a little bit more.
Yes, but it is something to consider because the motivators are something that we use. When you see the motivators, what I'd like is if you're coming back to the next call, we do these on the first and third Mondays, that you can bring it back to the call and we'll talk about motivators. We are approaching the top of the hour, but what I wanted to make sure that I'm commenting on, okay, is look, you have to know your behavioral style and why it is you react certain ways. What about your behavioral style? Like I know I'm a super high I and a super high S, and I literally have no C and no D, okay? So think about this. My C on a scale of 1 to 99 is a 2, okay? Yeah. My D on a scale of 1 to 99 is like a 6, very low. You also have to know what those low figures mean. Everybody know what a high means. Like a high D is very direct. A high S is very helpful and patient and doesn't like conflict and confrontation. A very high C is detail oriented, maybe a perfectionist. What's a low C mean? Well, low C is, I call it the FU gene, meaning we're non-compliant. We want to do things completely different. A low C often shows up like a high D because they don't want to do anything the same way as anybody else. They want to do it their own way. And when their own way doesn't work, they start to, you know, it's just a mess. Hey, buddy. So he is so cute. Oh, is that how old is he, Jason?
He's 3. He just
God bless.
just turned 3. He's a super nerd. If you follow me on Instagram, he's like reading multiplication. He's a COVID kid. He just is like a super nerd. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry. He just ran in.
No,
Love it. Watch your language.
no
Rick, Gina.
worries. No worries. Yeah. What did I say?
No, but I'm just
He looks
telling you
nothing
in
like
advance.
me, and we still
Oh,
watch-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Watch my language because I do know to swear. Yes, go ahead, Kim.
I have a question. And this might not be the right spot for it as far as
Just ask away.
would you also use a disc profile for agent attraction, like to get the right people around you for your organization?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's what I would suggest. I don't think that you're going to talk about, hey, before I can talk to you about EXP, I'd love for you to take this disc.
Right.
What would be better for you to do, though, is to know the disc so well that after 5 minutes of conversation, you know what their behavioral style is. Okay. That would serve you. Am I wrong on that, Selena? Do you think
No,
that's
I think it's
accurate?
perfect. I
Yeah,
think it's perfect.
Because once you start to get it and you understand, that's why I say, like, when you do interviews, face-to-face is so important, because it takes a while for people to relax and then truly settle into their behavioral style. So in the beginning, maybe they're on edge, they're anxious, you know. And by the way, excited and anxiety all seem like the same thing when you're feeling it in your body, right? Frantic and anxious, we used to call franctious, right? And because they all show up as a similar behavior, and you don't know, is it frantic? Is it anxious? Is it excited? What is it that's causing this behavior? So I would say once you know, like Sherry on the call just brought us a recruit. Oh my God. The guy must be an IC. Like he likes to talk and hear himself talk, but he's also very detail oriented. Like he's breaking down all these different things that he needs. And it drives me bananas. Okay. Even though I'm a high I, I'm not a high C. Right. So all I'm saying is I have to adjust my conversation and my listening skills such that they can connect with that person. So once you learn DISC at a high level, it makes you a much better recruiter because I can remember when Workman Success Systems hired me, I was coach number 6 or 7. I think we have 80 coaches now, right? Something like that, Selena.
About that, yeah.
And they give me my first client. I've been coaching for years and it's a super high D. And like within a month, I get a call saying, we're taking your coaching client away from you. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, she doesn't feel like you're direct enough for her. I'm like, oh, I go, come on, give me a bunch more. Give me a bunch of high Ds. I'll show you guys. Because I was like, just being my natural coaching self, but I wasn't being on purpose. So when the next time they sent me a high D client, they even called and said, we've got this really high D client, Rick. Do you think you want to go? Hell yes, I do. Right. And so they give me that client. Well, I have been with that client now for all 7 years.
Wow.
And they're super high D and they don't know that I'm not a high D. They have no idea. They don't get to see my disc. I get to see theirs. So,
Do you have any other recommendations other than the platinum rule for us to study the DISC profile? I mean, to like just understand it better, like you said, 5 minutes with a person, because my organization has grown pretty quick and I just want to do it better and then help my builders because I have a bunch of builders, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right about this. We're doing a team building call, but that is in a way team building. But there is something on Google, if you find it, it's called the Center for Something Living. And they are experts in the DISC and they have educational products, DVDs, all kinds of stuff that I used to get from them to learn more. For instance, that the DISC was created by Dr. William Marston in 1926. He's also the man who created Superwoman, like little facts like that what it came out of. There's a movie called Dr. Marston's Women or Dr. Marston and His Women because he did a lot of studying of females. So I would definitely, that movie a little goes off track because it doesn't stick to the subject matter because it's a movie and they want your attention. But so anyway,
Thank you.
that's good. Last minute questions or comments before we wrap up. Would everybody be willing to give us one aha that they got out of today really quickly?
The biggest thing for me is make sure to DISC assessment and the love languages. You know, I know the book. I recommend that book out to everybody. But that's funny. I haven't done it for my teammates, for the people that I have on my team. I haven't done that, and I need to because I am finding that I have to say more thank yous, and I really appreciate you. When for me, I'm like, it's fine. I got it done. Moving on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Kim. So yours is like Jason's, that the love language is going to be helpful. I think that's a big deal, especially like Kim, if you look at the fact, like in your team, look at your generals, who are your big builders, you should know their love languages for sure. Amberly, who's that sitting next to you that just walked away?
This
Rudely.
is Diana. Sorry, she has a medical call she has to take real quick. But what I wanted to share too is that, I think this has been great information. I appreciate you, bringing us all here today, and just the importance of really putting in the right people in the right position to, have an effective and efficient team.
Yeah.
That's, it's been slow for us, but we've been, it's been a process for us reviewing everything and learning how to take our business to the next step. And so it's been, extremely informational, and I just appreciate all the little nuggets you continue to share with us along the way.
You're welcome. And thank you for saying that. Selena and I both have a hero. Her name is Christy Buck. And Christy runs a team of 27,
it's bigger
maybe
than that
it's
now.
bigger. It's like 35 or 40. She'll probably do 5 million in gross closed commission. It's her own brokerage, but the brokerage is only her team. And the reason I bring it up is Christy's been amazing because you just said something, Amberly, that triggered this comment, which was that making sure you have the right people in the right spot. So
Mhm.
because she brings on so many people, but she's using very careful processes, she has in the past had to re-examine and say, oh, I had the right people, but they were in the wrong seats on the bus.
Mhm.
Meaning this person here was like, I remember her talking about all the complaints she had about one of her buyer's agents. This is many years ago. I mean, I've been with the company 7 years. Well, now that buyer's agent is now her #1 listing specialist. Because
Is Christy
that,
the one that also does the walkthrough that?
yeah,
The
she
one-
does.
The video.
Yeah, she
That's
does
on
the
my
walk.
list. Let me tell
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
that I'm gonna make happen.
Oh,
Well,
do you mean the
training-
7-figure ride along?
No, I think,
Yes.
well, she does the 7-figure ride along where you go to her office in Houston, but she also does a
Mhm.
walkthrough video training her buyer's agents on how to show a property properly. And that's the point I wanted to make, is that when we were doing deep dive examinations into why maybe things weren't working well, nobody was ever training the buyer's agents on a lot of teams, my team too, on what do you do when you show a property? What are questions you ask? What are scripts? Things like that. One of the greatest scripts I ever learned is to always say to everybody that you show a house to, would you buy this house?
House. Yeah.
And they said, Rick, you were just in the house with me. I told you how much I hated it. I go, yes. And I paid attention to that. So tell me what would have to be different for you to want to buy this house. Well, Rick, remember, I don't know if you remember, I said, I want my kitchen in the backyard facing the back, not overlooking the front grass, right? Like things like that. These are all parts of understanding. And we will have one of these calls where we talk about how important training is and what are the resources you use to train your people. So very big point. Yeah.
What
Good for
was
you.
the name of
Diana,
that
nice
video?
to meet you. What's that?
What was the name of that video?
Oh, it's not the name of a video. It's
Yeah.
with that she did a video for her team
Yeah.
to show them how to walk through and do an open house. I mean, showing a
Showing.
property. So I'm saying it would be good if we all did that. I haven't done one yet, but I need to do that for my own team. And if I do, Sherry, you're more than welcome to use it. But think about what you do when you show a property. You don't take the buyers into the kitchen and go, this is the kitchen. That's ridiculous. But what do you say? Tell me what parts of this kitchen are exciting to you and which parts aren't, right? Like you could say that. All kinds of things you could say that darn as stupid as you open the door and there's a toilet and you go, this is a bathroom. Really? Thanks for sharing with me. So, okay. So a lot of good stuff coming up. We're going to be doing these calls. We're recording them. And this is about team building. And we're going to keep building on these and moving to higher and higher level team building. Okay.
Thanks
right.
for joining today,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.